To respond to Judge Loeffler's comment that economists don't tend to be that wild and crazy. And in fact, Fed economists tend to be kind of reserved. So with that, I really wanted to jump into the slides that I have to show to follow up from Patty's presentation. What I've been able to do at the Federal Reserve, besides wearing one hat as tracking our regional economy, I help write a report on current economic conditions about every 8 weeks called the Beige Book, and that's a very uplifting report these days. The other hat that I get to wear is to work with Art Rolnick on this research that we started about 5 years ago, looking at the economic impact of investing in young children. And as I talked to Mike before coming to this presentation, we thought it would be helpful to show some of the science that influenced Art and me to write this paper. And it really comes from two areas. Economics is one, but the first was neuroscience, and looking at the evidence from neuroscience and developmental psychology about the impact of the early years on brain development and the impact on those early years on education and also adult mental health and physical health outcomes. So here are some of the familiar brain scan you may have seen before, which just shows the tremendous growth and change in the brain. Now, it's a more of a linear fashion. These are just snapshots. So the brain starts not fully formed. It needs lots of stimulation from the environment in order to grow. And during the first 3 years of life, about 85% of a young child's brain is formed. Here you can see the pictures at birth, age 6 and age 14. You'll notice that after the period about age 5 or 6, there's this pruning that happens. So the environments in which children grow up will emphasize certain connections in that brain, and those connections really stay hardwired. And while we can remediate these situations later on when those children are older in terms of their behavior and outlook and so on, that wiring stays intact. And so it's much more difficult to work with children when they're older than when they are younger during these sensitive periods. Here's another image of those same brain scans, and at this point neuroscientists remind me to tell all audiences that the brain does remain plastic. Even though that early wiring is so important, we always can learn throughout our lifetimes. Now, a study, I'm going to share two studies. One is conducted by Hart and Risley, who went into the homes of families that had parents with higher levels of education, that had a college degree, and also homes with parents who were on welfare, and evaluated the number of words that were spoken in the home and the type of interactions that happened between the parents and the children over time. This chart will show over time the vocabulary words of children in homes with college-educated parents and those with parents who are on welfare. And you'll see by the age of 3, the children in those homes with college-educated parents have twice the vocabulary words of children who are living in poverty. Another study is called the Adverse Childhood Experience Study. Here, thousands of adults were interviewed about their early childhood experiences, and then we're able to look at their health records and their health outcomes as an adult. And in terms of alcoholism and the use of illicit drugs, their self-reporting of these items is the number of adverse childhood experiences, and they had about 8 or 9 of them in this study. As the number of those adverse experiences increase, the likelihood of suffering from depression or alcoholism or using illicit drugs goes up as well. And as I just leaked, the same is true with depression. As the number of adverse childhood experiences increases, the odds ratio of suffering from depression increases as well. Now, you'd expect this in terms of these outcomes in terms of mental health, but it also holds true for adult health in terms of heart disease. As the number of these ACEs increases, the odds of suffering from heart disease increases as well. And this is because these early experiences create what neuroscientists call toxic stress. It hampers that healthy brain development and has long-term impact going downstream. Now, in just a minute or two, I want to just summarize one of the key studies that was conducted some time ago, the Perry Preschool study. Now, this is a known study where children from low-income families in Ypsilanti, Michigan were randomly assigned to attend a high-quality preschool program that included home visits with the teacher. The teacher went to the homes of these children that were in these preschools to work with the parents on parenting skills. And the researchers were able to track the outcomes of the children who received the preschool relative to a control group until the age of 40. And at that time, our economists conducted a cost-benefit analysis of the project. The cost was $10,000 on an annual basis. The children attended on average for a year and a half. And then the savings came to the K through 12 system due to reductions in special education, higher earnings for the children who attended Perry. Some came back to the public in the form of higher tax revenue, and then reductions in the need for police protection, court costs, and incarceration costs, and reductions in costs to the victims of crime themselves. So adding up all of the benefits relative to the costs, it's a very high ratio, $16 returned for every dollar that was invested in this project. What Art Rolnick and I did is we looked at the stream of benefits relative to the costs over time and calculated the annual interest rate. And we estimate that annual rate of return is 18%. So not looking back at the past couple of weeks, but over the long-term gains of the stock market, and I think actually these days I have to go about 50 years. Adjusting for inflation is probably more like 5% relative to the high rate of return here that we see at 18%. Most of the benefit is accruing to the public. We estimate that public return at 16%. So I'm going to leave it the presentation at there and look forward to your questions. Thank you.